the ethical way that they behave. And that's not formally taught in a course, so you're not going to get it out of your, out of a book or something you're getting from your cell phone. As an undergraduate, I was an undergraduate at Stanford, and I would say I don't remember so much of what I got out of my classes, and this is a while ago. But what I do remember was a number of the conversations I had with my classmates at dinner as we were just talking about the things that they were learning and the things that they were surprised about. And so I think as we go increasingly digital, I think we risk losing some of the other aspects of education that are as important. We need to scale, because scaling is going to be one of the biggest problems in the future for us, because there's so much to learn. We need to keep everyone educated, but we have to be careful about the ways that we want to have a well-rounded, interactive, a social learners and development. So I'm not speaking from any evidence other than my own experience, but I see a lot of nodding heads, and I think people could understand that's an incredible value of our educational programs and our interactions with teachers. Having as teachers, a person also makes a difference that that may be enhanced by some of this personalized learning that a computer or an AI system can give. But in the end, I think you still want a lot of education controlled by teachers. So that's just a personal opinion.
So we have the same experience. We realized that actually all this thing on digital learning, online learning can only teach a certain type of skills, whereas the human interaction is still very, very important. So what we have been doing more of blended learning. Like for example, one of the very typical way where we train our senior civil servants is where we gather a group of them from the different parts of the public service. Some dealing with economic policies, some dealing with social policies, some dealing with security policies. Our role is really to bring them together and then put them through an experience together. And then that's where we can then enhance better understanding how different part of government works. And one of the ways where we find it useful to apply this thing called personalized learning is that because the starting point for each of these students that comes to us, and they are very senior people, I mean they're all directors of certain departments, industry, but because of their specialization, the knowledge that they come to are quite uneven. So those from the security agency may not know a lot about our economic policies, how we do economic regulations, or our social policy, etc. So what we did is that we converted some of this knowledge into e-learning packages, and we give them access before they come. So those who find that they actually do not know much about economic policies, they can go and go online and learn about all this before they come. So that by the time they come for the class, 6 weeks that they are spent together, their understanding are all level up. So I think this is a way where personalized learning can play. We don't really control what they want to learn, because we assume that you look at your curriculum, you know what you're going to go through, and we tell you, and then you kind of decide what you need to level up. So we found them to be important and useful. And then the part about human interaction is really something that we find that it's something that you can't do away with.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes. Okay. First thing, right? While we are seated here, it doesn't mean that we are smarter than you. We are seated here because we arrow us to sit here. Okay. Second thing, just now I think Robert already said, right? Easy in, easy out, right? So sitting there is very easy. You learn nothing, right? So maybe some of you can also help to participate in contributing ideas, because just now I think Robert or Roger said they also want to learn from you. So if anyone feels strongly about contributing certain opinions, you can disagree with us. Certainly you can disagree with me. Alright, to the next question, please also contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question that's probably at a meta level, but since Anderson has posed a challenge to the audience, I'll try to respond to him. My question would have been, since you're all experts in the respective perspective on how to teach others, how to optimize learning in your respective audiences, I would have been very curious about how you are, in your personal capacity, in your own learning, how you are doing something much more today, what you're most focused on to enhance your own learning. And since Anderson has put a challenge, my personal endeavor, if you will, and I'm not from the training sector, I'm in financial services. So I work for a fund management company, but I do training on the side for free, for fun. And the one thing I've learned is that the best way to learn is to teach. And so that's my concept, and I'm sure it's familiar to many of you. So I'd like to hear from all of you, what is the one thing that you do a lot more today, now that you've learned so much about teaching others?
Interesting question. Anyone on the floor would like to contribute their opinions? What is the one thing that you learn, in, how should I phrase it? Now that we have learned so much about teaching others, what is the one thing that we learn such that we can learn better? Anyone? Don't be shy. If not, then you can send here. Yes.
I actually find, as a founder of a startup ed tech company, there's a blog or Quora where people answer questions. There's a guy, Jason Lemkin, that founded EchoSign, and I find his short postings that answer very specific topics extremely helpful. How should we price renewals? How should we do this? So there are 100 to 300 words from an experienced practitioner, very focused on a question that I'm wrestling with every day. So I found that to be incredibly helpful. Notwithstanding, I'm a big fan of team-based learning, blended learning, flipped classroom, everything else I pitch. But I find that's personally helpful in my development as an ed tech entrepreneur.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to contribute to that? Yes? Okay, then.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I thought of sharing something that many years back that we were teaching mobile programming to students, and poly students is not the most motivated group of students to learn. So we tried this experiment. So the student came in, we said, go and decide that what application you want to do, or you can download an app from the website and decide what you want. So in the 3 hours programming, we teach a mini lecture, and then we let them do. So in these 3 hours, whether they choose a game, whether they choose some learning, whatever they do. So at the end of the 3 hours, we had a hard time. We need to chase them out of the room. They were all so engrossed in their little app that they want to develop. And at the end of the 15 weeks course, they said, teacher, can we please download it and try? They were so motivated. So when you talk about personalized learning or personalized teaching, during that time, we don't have all these terms. But when I look back, in some sense, each one of them take their own app that they want to do. We give that mini lecture, but they ask us a lot of questions because they were developing. It's a form of personalized teaching. But in the form, when they develop the app, it's a form of personalized learning. So the principle that I want to go is, we give them the autonomy. They choose what they want to do, right? But the same objective is the same learning outcomes. At the same time, we give them a kind of a purpose, that they come for the class, they achieve something at the end. So I think in personalized learning or teaching, I find that is quite an important principle. Yeah.
In fact, thank you for that. I really want to bring up this point of purpose-driven learning, because we learn for a purpose. Okay.
Actually, just now one of the panel mentioned something. I just like to add on to that. He was saying, if I'm not wrong, it's Roger. Okay, anyway, I think he was saying that sometimes there's this thing you learn, but you at the end of the day, you don't know what you're learning. There's something like that. Who was the one who said that? Okay, anyway.
All said the same thing, right?
Okay, so I just want to bring up this to maybe, to see that maybe you all can relook in this, because my understanding is some of the professionals, there's some guidelines for some professionals, especially in the medical field. I think you're all in the medical field, some of you, yeah. So for like people like doctors, dentists or whatever, they have this that imposed learning. That means you must clock in a certain hours of learning before you can get a license. I think someone mentioned just now. So things like this, I actually appreciate what Anderson mentioned just now regarding the sharing on the video. I fully agree with, learning, I felt has to be very self-motivated. If it's being imposed, I think sometimes you learn for the sake of learning to get the credit, but you actually, at the end of the day, you learn a lot, but it is not practical to what you need to apply in your work. So at the end of the day, it defeats the purpose. And does it really help? And does it serve any purpose? So I'm just bringing this up as my own opinion on whether it is necessary for professionals to clock in certain hours in order that they can get the license. Because if at the end of the day, the purpose is just to clock that hours of learning to get that license, at the end of the day, the retention is not there. So, yeah, just share this thought.
To go back to his question about what is the one thing that we do to learn. For me, right, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I set up businesses and things like that. Every year I try and challenge myself to set up a new business. Okay, because just like that little boy, he has a purpose, right? And to sell things. And by selling things, by developing things, you realize that there are so many things that you do not know, and therefore you have to go and dig out answers, right? Like what was mentioned, right? Go and look for short answers and all that. Okay, and to me that's a tremendous personalization of my learning. There's no need for anybody to tell me how should I learn, what kind of styles and all that. Ultimately, it's really about how do I achieve my objective, okay, my purpose. Any of the panel would like to share?
I'd like to respond a little bit to your point, because I agree with you mostly. I'm a pediatrician, and so I'm used to telling my patients that they have to eat the vegetables sometimes. And so I'm torn a little bit, because I understand, and there's a lot of science around motivation, what motivates people, and that obviously has a major impact on their ability to learn. But I also know plenty of times where people have been forced to take the piano lesson, and that's become a major part of their lives, maybe not professionally, but just from a personal standpoint, and that they're just thankful of their parents that forced them to do the piano lesson. Or the things that are basic to what we now have learned to love, and that we just needed a start at. So I'm a little bit torn by what you're having to say, because I do understand that in the story about the programmers, I totally get that, and I understand how that's how we motivate certain people. But I also see this other side of it. And I don't know what's the right balance for it, but I think it's not all one way or the other.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think it's probably raising the question of how engaging the learning is. So it may be something that you don't need immediately, but it may be information that is good to know. So it's more of how the course is structured, or how the information is structured such that we can engage, or the learner can be engaged to want to know more about it, even though it may not be a purposeful learning in that sense. So I think that's still that's where the research comes in to make it interesting, to understand how can we get learners to be more engaged in information that is sort of abstract to them at that moment, but to help them to personalize it, or to understand it within their context, that they need to be able to pick it up when they do need it in the future.
I think this is the question that was raised about compulsory clocking learning hours. Roger will be in a very good position to address that. I remember when I was a young engineer, all right, every year I need to clock 100 hours. Okay, but no choice, right? So if no choice, then you jolly well make it fun for yourself. and purposeful. Just like NS, right? National Service. You ask the guys, you want to go NS? They say no, but no choice, right? Then they don't make good use of it. Roger?
Yeah, I just want to build on the point, maybe to address your question. To build on the point that just now that lady that talked about your poly experience, I think that resonated with me very much. Just to share a similar experience. So just now I talked about the way we train our senior civil servants. We bring them together for 6 weeks and we expose them to different type of policies, what are the constraints, what are the challenges, etc., etc. So our typical Kiasu Singapore mentality is that we used to pack the program very tightly. For 6 weeks, we make sure that they have no sleep, no rest. They have to work like damn bloody hard. Okay. Then after we in the last 1 year, we started to rethink the way we run the program. We started to create something similar to yours, as to appeal their own motivation and give them a certain degree of autonomy. We give them white spaces. So now we make our program less packed. We give them white spaces where the class themselves, in their own syndicate groups, they determine what things they want to learn and what things they want to solve. So within certain parameters, of course we cannot go and do all kinds of funny things. But then within a certain parameters, maybe they will decide that as a group we want to tackle a particular problem in the society. And then they themselves will go and, using the white space that we give them, they go and research and come up with a solution that you can present. You know, how do you help citizens better, etc. We find that actually, interestingly, the satisfaction ratings for the course actually goes up. And we get a lot of positive feedback for the program. And when we look back, we were scratching our head. Actually, we didn't do anything. You know, we didn't even teach them anything now. You know, we give you that space, you on target, go and do your research, go and teach yourself, and go and solve the problem, you know. The only incentive is that, depending on the class, you know, maybe you get to present that to a very senior, maybe to PM or to whoever, you know, we present a solution. I mean, that is probably the only incentive for that. But just by giving them that autonomy, that white space, we find that, wow, the satisfaction goes up so much. So I think, so to me, to answer your question, I think understanding the learner's motivation is important. You know, what do they want out of it? And of course, then trying to, although at the end, we still have to try to align it back to what's the outcome of the organization wants.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. I used to think that the brain was like a video recorder. That you just keep piling things in, and then that's how you learn. But actually, the brain filters out a lot. We're only able to take in a fraction of what all our senses are experiencing at any one time, and we're processing it. So in fact, some of the things that we do with our students is really show them where some of their blind spots are, where things are there, but they're not witnessing it at all. So I don't know if you've seen the gorilla basketball video. Yeah. So it's remarkable where your brain does filter out a lot. It also takes in information and it processes it. So people seeing the same scene can interpret it quite differently, can remember it quite differently. So the brain actually does a lot of work to process, and we probably don't do in education enough, giving them enough time to just process what they've learned. And it could be doing, it's white space, it could be doing something directly, or it could be just kind of hanging out. But we probably underestimate the time that's useful in terms of thinking and processing with all the things that we've jamming into our students' heads. So anyway.
Okay, so I'm not sure how much has been filtered out of your brains. But I need to filter out some questions. So we have one more question, please, in view of the time. One question. Yes. Okay, last one. All right.
No one asked the last question.
Yeah.
I asked Robert because we are talking about until we will implement flipped classrooms.
Yeah.
And I think this is the way most go. But at Broadpoint NUS, are they implementing flipped classroom in most of the schools, faculties now, or are they still going traditional lectures?
Okay. So the answer is it's mixed. And my feeling about that is that as an educator, our role is to pick the right pedagogical approach to tailor that to your outcome, what you're trying to teach someone. I don't think that one, it's a hammer and it's a nail and that's the only thing that you use. A good educator has a lot of different techniques that they use to get people actively engaged. A lecture can actually be, a fantastic lecture can actually get the learner to be actively engaged if they're good. Most don't, but you can do that. And I think you do want an active audience. You want an audience that's thinking with you and processing. We know that they'll learn deeper. But I think that in terms of the pedagogical approach, we make a mistake if we're saying that one size fits all. So I do believe that students are better prepared with the flipped classroom. We were very big in that in Duke US. We were one of the, as I mentioned, one of the first schools anywhere in the world to completely flip our classroom. This is 13 years ago. And we've been incredibly successful with it. But I also think that, people said, oh, you hate the lecture, you think, people accuse me of saying a lecture is educational malpractice. Okay? And I said, no. What the lecture is not so good at is giving tons and tons of content and information about everything about the body. But what the lecture is good is we would have our researchers come in and tell our students why they're so passionate about a particular subject that they've spent their life researching. Or that or hearing about it from a patient, what's important for a patient in terms of their interaction with a doctor. And so those don't necessarily are best done in a flipped classroom, even though I am like one of the world's biggest proponents of it. I think as educators, our job is to be a little bit better than that, and be specific to what we're trying to achieve.
Can I have each of the presenters to just say the final few words? Annabel?
Well, personalized learning and how learning sciences can contribute to that. Well, I think I've learned a lot today. I hope you have. To think about like not just personalized learning, personalized teaching, but also from different methods. So again, what's the goal of learning? Why you want to do this, or why do we want to learn something? Like what Bob was just saying, it really depends on how to get there, what is needed to get there. So that's where, on the researcher side, that we're trying to figure that out and to see that indeed there's evidence to show that a particular method is important for a particular outcome that we want to achieve. So it's still at a very nascent stage right now for us. We are also struggling, but I think struggling in a good way because we need to also work very closely with the learners as well as the educators in the field, in the corporate world, and in the public service as well, to understand their context. Where are they coming from? What's important to them in terms of learning? To then deal with factors like motivation, engagement, and all that. So, well, I think my statement is like we still have a long way to go, but I think with this approach, I think all of us are having consensus that it's something worthwhile to look into. We're not exactly barking up the wrong tree, but maybe there's more trees to bark up.
I was going to say something very similar, that this is really so exciting to be in education now. That there's all the artificial intelligence, all the computer, IT stuff that's coming out, all the more that we actually understand from the brain, from the neuroimaging to just better ways of assessing learning, and to be able to then use that and this concept that we have to continue to learn through our lifetimes. That's kind of new. My father was a very brilliant guy. I don't think that he really saw his work as something that was constantly changing, and my career has been very different. I'm doing something completely different than what I was trained to do in undergraduate and medical school. So I just think that the folks, you're here, you're obviously interested in education. You're in a great area, and I think it's a lot of fun, and I want to keep you all encouraged to keep at it, keep going.
Well, I've nothing much to add. I just want to thank you all for your participation, and I think a lot of the questions have triggered food for thought for me in helping me to solve some of my own problems in my organization. So for that, I want to thank you.
Okay, that's, I'm not sure you all have heard about this. Some people say that if the learner had not learned, what is the other half? The teacher had not taught, right? Okay? Very unfair statement. Based on our discussion, you can see, alright? The teacher can teach, but the learner still have not learned. But also very unfair, you cannot blame the learner, because maybe the learner is learning something else. Okay? So I think learning is really a very personalized enterprise. Alright? You can fail your exam, it is fine. Okay, you can have NYC from your WSQ competency assessment. It is fine, right? Unless you are able to take responsibility for your own personal learning outcome. I think that is most important, right? And the role of educators, I'm beginning to realize more and more so, that our role is to help the learner discover the purpose of their learning. Okay, because the purpose-driven learning is, I think, the one that will do merits to the learners, to pay the teachers to teach. Okay, and in fact, there's this actual terminology known as heterogogy. Okay, understanding the self-driven learning. And I think that is where the bigger investment should go into. Right? How do we continue to motivate people to find purposes in their own learning? No answers, right? And I'm not sure whether AI would be able to address that. But in any case, we thank you for your participation, mental participation, intellectual participation, if not your verbal participation. Thank you so much, and let's put our hands together.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. It was really enlightening. I think I'm saying for most of us here, if not all, enlightening, insightful, and definitely enriching. Thank you. Can I ask if we are ready with the results?